We're back on the Chevelle today. The issue here is we've got some sort of ignition problem. Went out to eat one night and thought we'd take the car out for a cruise. Had a good time. Went to go home. Wouldn't start. Actually, couldn't even get the key to turn. It just there's no key in it now, but it behaves when the key's in it. Behaves just like this. It just is locked. If I wiggle the steering wheel enough, it would get some play to it. But would never start. Didn't even register the key was turned. Like nothing was happening. Lights never came on. It does seem to be an ignition problem. I'm not sure if it's the tumbler itself is broken, so it's just spinning freely in there, or if there's something wrong there, or if there's something wrong, a little more intricate in the ignition system. Either way, the solution is to get from top down. Having a 50-year-old car is pretty cool sometimes, except when they break. Because then you have 50-year-old parts to get, and you can't just run down to your local AutoZone and pick up parts. Hopefully we can find the parts we need once we figure out what's going on. But obviously something's broken in here. Like that's my years and years of unofficial backyard mechanic experience tells me that it's broken. That's about all I got. So we're gonna tear into this and just kind of work our way down and see if we can figure out what the problem is. I'm sure it'll become evident once we get in there, and then we'll see what we can do with parts. We're gonna start from the top down. So I'll take the steering wheel off first, and the horn part just pops off. I take these 3 screws out for the horn button, basically. Just gonna set stuff up here so it looks track of it. Now we've got a ring here, a little spring ring that is actually the horn button. So when you press on the horn, it pushes on this piece, just beveled, just a little spring to it, and it makes contact with a spring in here that engages the horn. I'll take that spring out because I have a tendency to lose these things. And then there's a big nut here, which I believe is a 7/8. Yep. Steering wheel doesn't just pop off. You got to pull it off with something. It's onto a spline, and it's pretty tight. And there's screw holes here, and so you can get a puller, like a steering wheel puller. I don't have one, but I do have just a standard gear puller, which actually works pretty good. So where'd it go? So this is that gear puller, and you just kind of line it up where you can get access to the threads in there. Let's thread in, not out. And you thread this puller in, and as it threads in, it's going to push the steering shaft down, pull the steering wheel out. And I think though, look at this. So this goes on the end of this, and this will all have to swivel. I'm afraid this is going to bind up on the steering shaft. Cap, well, here's the other problem. Will that cap fit between this and that? No. Okay. What about just a couple of washers? Let's try that. And then, can I get behind there? Because I couldn't get these to stay. Probably could have taped them. Because there's a little flange on that side, the flange out. But then I'm threading against the flange, and I don't know if that will work. No. No, alright. Let's try this. Take 3, I think. How many takes is this? How many times have I tried this? You guys know? Are you paying attention? All right, little washer. Because that flange, that shaft is up inside that flange. So I think if I just put this in there, oh, it does fall out. See? There is enough room. Okay. So I wonder if I put a little like grease on this and just a little stick to it. I'll also lube it a bit, which won't be so bad either. So just some red bearing grease. Makes it nice and sticky. We can thread this in. Oh, not sticky enough. Just keep my finger up there and keep it from falling out. There we go. So now I can rotate as we thread this in. It should pull the steering wheel off. There. Piece of cake. I take our plate cover off here. That's again 3 small screws. These are small. Don't lose them. Don't you come loose. These inside there. Okay, so this is kind of the hard part. This is spring loaded, and you got to push this in and then pop a retaining ring out. And this is hard to push in. There's a tool you can get for this. It's actually called a steering wheel back plate removing tool. I think that's what it's called. You can make one. I thought about making one, but this was like $16 or $17 at the parts store. I'll put a link on Amazon for one. It's the same one. I just got it at a local auto parts store. You probably can find it at your local auto parts store as well. And they have 2 of them at this store. This one was the base one, and it happens to be the right thread to go over the steering column. But I think different cars, different eras, maybe European versus American cars, I'm not sure, have, I think, different size thread. So that other tool came with multiple like connecting nuts. So you may need that one. But for these old GM cars, this one works just fine. So the way this works is this threads onto this shaft, and then this pushes against this plate, and you just tighten that down, right? And then as you thread this wing nut down, it's going to pull on the shaft and push the plate back, so we can get this tiny little retaining ring out. So I think you can see that right here. That's the retaining ring I'm talking about, little snap ring. And so we just got to thread this down and pushes that plate down. It doesn't have to go down very far. Obviously, just got to go down about the width of that ring. That's about as far as it's going to go, I think. It should be. So now you can kind of see in there. Get some light on you there. But that's pretty free and loose now. So now we just got to get that ring out of there. There. Now, be careful those don't fling out on you. And then we can loosen this back up and thread the rest of the way off. We'll take this ring off here. This plate should slide right off. Get that off. Okay. And then take this turn signal out. There are 3 screws. 1, 2, 3. Well, the third one up here, you got to kind of shimmy the turn signal around to get to. They come out super easy though, and you pull this out. And take the spring out. And then this is your turn signal housing. There's 3 screws, 1 here. Or sorry, this is your turn signal switch. There are 3 screws, 1 here, one back in there, and one up around behind the switch here. You gotta pull the turn signal up to the right to get to that one. You're gonna take your turn signal lever off with that screw there, and then unscrew the hazard button, and then this whole thing can come out of there. Okay, so let's see. Now we got the turn signal switch out, and it just is. That's attached to a wiring harness. It's all the way down on the bottom, so it's not gonna come all the way out. You can unhook the wiring harnesses down here. This big plug, and this is zip tied up, and you can unhook that. It'll give yourself a little more slack to pull this out and down. And then there are 3 torque screws here, here, and here. Take this housing off, but first you got to take the key tumbler out, which is actually part of our problem. This is somehow broken inside, and I don't think it might be the tumbler, but also I don't know, it might be some kind of mechanism inside, but I feel like it's the tumbler. And that there's a pin right in here. It comes out there. It has to be pushed in. The service manual does say the key needs to be in the run position. Push on that and pry out the lock cylinder at the same time. And we'll see how it goes. There it goes. Okay. So that is the lock. And that seems to be working pretty well. Meaning it might not be the lock itself that's bad. Because that works just fine. Which means it might be broken in the steering column, which is suboptimal. If I get some needle nose in there and see if I can turn that and see what happens. There's a gear drive from here that runs down to the ignition, and I believe it's on the top side of the steering column down in there. So it's actually not a key problem. It appears to be an ignition problem. I'm gonna try to get you in here a little bit and you can see what I'm working with, or why I'm having so much trouble, I hope, anyway. There's this ignition rack down here on the side, and it's this like rectangular piece, and it's got teeth on the top, and it's got a shaft or a rod that connects down to the ignition switch, which is buried back here. And when you turn the key, it turns this piece here, this piece right here, rotates that, and as that rotates, you know, this way, when you turn the key, it turns a gear up under here. You can kind of see it, but you can't really tell, no. And that gear rotates like backwards this way, which pulls that rack out and pulls that in a different position. So like your accessory, your run position, start, and then the spring pushes it back. And that's not gearing, whatever. It's not connecting. The gear part is just spinning, and that rack isn't really moving. It just kind of pops up and down. So one or the other or both have been stripped, at least partially, if not completely. The gear's plastic, and the rack is metal. So I'm assuming the gear is bad. I've already ordered one, and I have it, but I can't get it out. The rack part, though, I can't find, so I'm hoping I'm right about that. I can find one for a later model, but I can't find one for the early, late 60s, early 70s Chevelles. The problem is I've taken everything off of this. I've got the tilt lever off and the turn signal lever off, and got those 3 screws out, and this moves a little, but not very much. If I rotate, get a pair of pliers in here, and I rotate what would be the key, rotate that shaft all the way backwards, I get a little bit, but that's it. Feels like it's catching on something. Every time I hit that stopping point, that moves. As does, you can't see it because it's too dark in there, but there's a, you see that movement right there? Kind of moved in and out. Little dark spot. That's that gear, and it moves. So something is pulling on that whole mechanism when I pull this out. There is a spring, and I saw another guy do this on YouTube, and his spring was all mangled and deformed, and it was catching. And I wonder if I've got the same thing going on, or if something else is just sort of like blowed up in here, and so I've got something in the way, and it won't get out of the way, so I can pull this out. But since I can't get in there and see, I don't really know what it is. And I'm trying not to break anything and just like brute force this thing out of there, but that may be what I have to do. I'm still stuck on what is causing that. Whatever it is, it's on there pretty good. So I've got it to move a little bit more. This is the housing here, but that's it. That's all the farther I can get it to move out. And I think it's just hung up on something inside, and I just can't get leverage or seat. So I think I'm going to take the whole column out of the car and work on it on a bench. So these screws up here will have to come out. Probably last though. Looks like I gotta take off that panel down there. We'll see what's behind that. I've got wiring disconnected. This is the ignition switch. Yeah, and then there's the, what is it called? Like the neutral safety switch or something up here. Right there. That's gotta come loose. Or at least be disconnected. And then those screws, right? Those screws, just a screw right there. And probably one here, but it's already out. So that's kind of handy. See, this has been out before. Why? Why has it been out before? Oh, that's the speedo cable. This one up here. No, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay. Put those in a baggie so I don't lose them. And remove these nuts here to get it off the steering shaft. Okay, that's 9/16. There we go. 11/16, not 9/16. Does that go to? I'll pause here for just 1 second. I didn't know what this was at the time, but this is actually the shift linkage. So there should be a cable that comes from the transmission up to that lever. If that lever is not all the way, I think in this case, up against that plate, you can't take the key out. It tells the steering column what position the transmission is in. Is it in neutral? Is it in park, particularly? Normally, there'd be a linkage connected here that you'd have to disconnect, but for some reason, previous owners of my car decided not to hook this back up when they took the steering column out the last time, so I don't have one. Let's go back inside. I think I have everything else disconnected. I should be able to just remove these. That one, and the one on the other side. And I think this will just come out. Well, got it out, finally. That was, it actually wasn't that hard. What I ran into was, there's a bolt at the bottom that connects on this shaft, or a bolt that connects this shaft to the steering shaft, so down to the rack. And there's a clamping bolt, and that bolt is, you have to take the bolt all the way out. I thought you just had to loosen it so the clamp would loosen and you could slide it out, but it's got a little notch right here that bolt runs through, and it would not come out. So you've got to take that bolt all the way out, and then this came out super easy. So this was the transmission linkage that was disconnected. It wasn't hooked up to anything, so I didn't have to unhook that. That tells it what gear it's in. For the cars that have the an indicator in the dashboard, or it's like a neutral safety switch, make sure that you're not in gear when you start the car, or the steering wheel won't work if it's not in neutral or in, you know, that sort of thing, like all those different safety mechanisms. So there's no safety mechanisms in this car. We die like real men. So now I have it out. Maybe that can get a little more visibility here. This is supposed to come all the way out. As you can see when hopefully you can see this anyway. Catches. So that moves here. So it's catching this rack on the inside or something connected to the rack. And it's not supposed to. This covers all that stuff up. You're supposed to be able to slide this off to get access to that rack. But it is not cooperating. A little bit. Notice right here there's a crack in it too. I've been saying for a while, I think somebody's been in here before. The panel that goes underneath this, the trim panel, was missing. All of this stuff, these safety mechanisms have been disconnected. And there's a crack in this housing. So I feel like this has been unhooked before and some work done to it. Maybe it was replaced. Maybe this is not the original steering column when they did some kind of minor restoration on this car before I got it. And probably a frame on, looked like frame on restoration, sort of a refresh of sorts, not a full-blown resto. And but I wonder if they hooked something in here to pull this off, and that's what cracked that housing right up here. There's a crack, so that's a chunk of aluminum. It comes off like a little bit. I feel like it's gonna come loose and it's gonna break everything. And I am trying to avoid doing that. I did find one of these housings on eBay for about $100. I'd rather not spend the extra $100, but I also rather have my car running, you know. Probably spent $100 in time the last 2 weeks trying to get this thing apart. This has been an ongoing project, like a long ongoing project. Longer than I'd like. I can see that where it's pulling, it's catching that whole mechanism. So it's flexing. I can feel it now. It's not a hard stop. So when I pry it, it will move a little, but it always wants to go back. Just prying against something. But I have thought about, since I found one online, to buy another one of these, paint it black, and adios it. It looks like it was blue. There's blue paint around here. There's some, where was it? Right here. blue paint there and blue paint there. So maybe this was a steering column from a blue, like a Malibu. You know, some other Malibu, Chevelle, Impala, like they used them in these things. Camaro, I think they use them in Camaros. These are pretty common steering column for 70s Chevys. So it could have been from a blue car, and they painted it black to match. Interesting. That swivels. No, it's locked against that thing. Oh my lord. Are you kidding me? So this wasn't in the right spot, like probably in park or whatever. Like, I swiveled this, locked this into that. See how that makes that bar come up? No, this just does slide right off. All right, well, if you're having trouble getting this housing off, check your transmission control, because that might be part of your problem. So now I got that off. Let's rotate around and see what we're dealing with. Okay, so this is what we're dealing with here. This is that gear. There's that rack. And what's happening is it's coming loose. There's a spring here. It doesn't look as bad as I thought it would be, but this is slipping from the rack. It doesn't take much force to do it. See, like that. Yeah, see how loose this is? So I think that's got to be something. Oh yeah. Okay. Okay, so here's our issue. Now I got this off. I'll show you here. This gear has no teeth on it. This is smooth. I mean, it's got a little bit of teeth on it. This has the only teeth here on the outside, so it easily slips off this rack. The rack itself appears to be fine, which is great because I don't have one of these and I can't find one of these. But I do have one of these. So for once, maybe we've cut a break. Now I just gotta figure out how to get this little tiny, the world's smallest retaining ring off, not damage that spring, and replace this little gear. Yep, there it goes. Got it?
Mm-hmm. It's not moving, so I'll let you lift it out so you can see how it went in.
Yeah, so it just clips in and slides out. Sweet. Okay.
You want me to take this right out?
Maybe.
It was coming.
Yep.
Okay.
That is the easiest way. Like some anti-seize in there maybe. Or just some aluminum dust from inside the...
Oh,
there's
yeah.
a mess in here. It makes you wonder, like, how did it work before? Like, it only failed that one day. It worked for 2 years prior to that. I wonder if I should put something back in there, though. Like an anti-seize or graphite or something. Ouch. A little spring clip there that I didn't know was there. Makes a nice razor blade on your finger. Probably ought to have like a first aid kit on here, given how often I cut my hands. Super glue. I got some Gorilla Glue. I'll seal it up. But it is 69 to 77 GM ignition sector gear with tilt. Looks the same.
It does.
Or it looks close enough anyway.
Yep.
It's got the right amount of teeth.
In the right places.
It's always good to have the right amount of teeth in the right places.
Down.
Okay, so turns out that was our that was my problem. This gear right here, you see it was all just stripped out. There wasn't much left of it. But thankfully, the rack on the inside was good. So, because I can't find that thing anywhere. And I have one of these. We found our problem. Now we got to start the process of getting it all put back together. Now that we've finally got this thing disassembled and finally figured out what our issue is, that was a lot. that was a lot harder than I thought it was going to be. I made it a lot harder than it had to be, and I probably, you know, if I ever have to do this again, I'll be able to do it much quicker the next time. It actually really, now that I know what's involved and I've gone through all of the bad ways to do it, this actually probably would have been much faster if I had just taken the steering column out to begin with and worked on it on the bench. And as soon as I did that, within, you know, minutes, I had this thing apart instead of days and days and days, a few hours a day. Or where there wasn't a few hours a day, it was like a day where I'd spend half an hour fighting it and get mad and go do something else, and come back 2 days later and work on it for a half hour and get mad and go do something else. And that was kind of the trend for a while. We got to figure it out. Now start the process of putting this back together, but we'll do that in part 2. So make sure you hit the like and subscribe and hit the little bell down there so you know when part 2 comes out, and you can watch me struggle to put this back in. But I actually think this is going to go back in a lot easier than it came out, given that I created so much trouble for myself and made it so much harder. Now that I know that, I'll have an easier time, I think, putting it back in than I got taking it out. But generally, I believe the reinstall process will be a little more tedious than the uninstall process. Good luck to you in your project. As always, I hope this gives you a little confidence to work on yours, and you can learn from my mistakes. If you ever have to do this on your car, you can get this done a lot faster than me. But I appreciate you watching. Thank you guys very much. We'll see you next time.